Welcome in to Louisiana Loaded podcast, as always, from the garage. And you can always follow us on social media everywhere. Like, share, comment, subscribe. We appreciate you. We'll have some big news from Louisiana Loaded coming up in the next couple of weeks. We're excited about where it's going, so make sure you're following, subscribed, and staying along with us. Each week, we have good conversation, and as always, looking forward to our special guest today and this week to talk the budding industry of college sports and somebody who is celebrating a new gig, as he has just been announced as the national writer for On3 Sports, which is a huge deal. It's a good friend of ours, Wilson Alexander, here. Wilson, it's good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, Jordy. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. Will and I were talking about before you showed up, just really, I don't know if we all understand. I'm sure there's a big quantity of people. If you read Wilson's stuff, if you're listening to this podcast, obviously you're a sports enthusiast, so you care about what you're reading and you care about what the information is. But Baton Rouge has really, the Advocate, NOLA.com, has become a hotbed of budding national writers that I don't know if it was intended or unintended, but when you look at the run of Ross Dellinger, who is, right now, I'd say he's the voice of college sports. He's probably got the heaviest voice in college football. Yeah,
I would certainly agree with that. And I mean, at least from a reporter, like
sure.
who is writing the stuff that is the most impactful, it's Ross.
Absolutely. Especially like with the most credibility. It seems like no matter where you watch, what you read, people are going off of his stuff. Brooks Cabina, who is now with Philadelphia, he covers the Philadelphia Eagles in a huge market. And then to Wilson, who is now a national writer for a huge company in On3, which is a very credible company that a lot of people go to get their news, whether it be in recruiting or sports, has now become this national writer right from Baton Rouge. And it's pretty cool. Like, I mean, it's cool to have awesome. An interest in sports and kind of look up after like 13 years and see that position has been filled by such a talented role, man. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm flattered that to be in the same breath in some way as those other people and to be considered like that. Thank you very much. Yeah. I still feel like I've got a long ways to go to catch up to them, but it has been, Ross is somebody, and the LSU market in general attracted me down here. I mean, covering LSU was like, yeah, well, who wouldn't want to do that? Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of been the case now for a while, and should only hopefully continue to be the case now that you've got Lane Kiffin here. And just there's always a story to tell at LSU. There's always something going on that's kind of dramatic. So it's pretty enticing for us as reporters.
We'll get to the change at LSU and everything that's kind of going on recently. But you started as a baseball beat reporter, right? I mean, can you talk about what it was like getting to a new market? You're from Atlanta, went to Georgia, obviously familiar with the SEC, and I'm sure LSU. But getting down here, what was the culture shock of it?
There was definitely some. So at the time, I was 8 months out of college working in Jackson, Mississippi, covering high school sports, helping out a little bit with Ole Miss and Mississippi State coverage on the weekends. And then this job opened up at The Advocate to cover LSU baseball and then help with football. So I get here February 2019, the week of the first baseball game, had really no clue what I was doing. And the culture shock was probably pretty significant. I mean, it was definitely like, okay, this is there's a lot more going on here than Jackson, which is nice right off the bat. That was nice. But it was certainly, just kind of a culture that I wasn't familiar with, having never spent time down here previously. But I right away felt so accepted by people. Mm-hmm. Quickly made a group of friends that I owe so much to, and just always felt like everybody was like wanting to help each other in some way. At least has been my experience down here. And I remember going to the St. Patrick's Day parade my first year here and thinking like, okay, this is great. I crawfish for the first time. Right. The parade was going. I was like, yeah, I can get used to this.
A little bit more than great. LSU baseball around here.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. But LSU baseball was great too.
Sure. What was your time like in covering the football program? Because there was so much change during that time, and probably the highest point the program will ever reach. I mean, you could probably keep playing this thing for 200 years and they'll keep talking about 19 forever. What was that all experience wrapped up like?
I remember a few times during the 2019 season, the columnist at The Advocate, Scott Rabelais, who's covered LSU for decades now, would look at me sometimes and say, it's not always like this. And it probably will never be like that again, as you said. That was incredible. And so, yeah, I've gotten to witness that season. I've gotten to witness 2 coaches getting fired. I've gotten to witness multiple Heisman Trophy winners now with Joe and Jaden. The baseball team winning 2 College World Series, women's basketball team winning. There's a lot of winners down here, which has been exciting. So it's a period of time that I've been lucky enough to experience and witness and chronicle a lot of exciting moments, a lot of drama as well in the midst of all that, and that's been really fun.
How has your industry changed in that time? Because I know our industry, I was in radio doing FM radio a decade ago. That doesn't even exist anymore. There's really no medium like that. How has the written media changed since you've come and where you are now?
I found, that people don't have the same appetite for certain types of stories that they used to. Mm-hmm. We would often, especially when I first got here, and maybe 2019 is a little bit different. Everybody wanted to know everything that could possibly could about that team, right? Yeah. But even going on before that, we would often write a lot of features about players and their backgrounds and things like that. And the transfer portal seems to have changed people's desire to learn about players and their history as much as they used to, I think. And also maybe it's just attention spans have shortened. I don't want to spend 2,000 words or something reading about a guy who maybe you don't know and maybe you don't think is going to be here very long, so you don't really get invested. I think that emotional investment in certain players has changed over the past 5 years or so, because fans can't see a guy start as a freshman and mature and grow and maybe struggle and get better and improve into a senior who's a star on the team, and then they're really invested in that. I feel like there's fewer cases of that, and so that affects what we do in a certain way where I don't find I write profiles about people, especially the players, quite as much as we used to. There doesn't seem to be the same interest. Whereas now there's such a high interest in how much money is getting spent, what is going on with NIL and the transfer portal and things like that. I think that's probably where I felt it the most, is just what readers care about and what they actually consume has changed. And the way they consume it has obviously changed as well.
Right. Scott Rabley, a genius writer in his own right. I feel like I've been reading his work since I've been a kid. And his prime of writing, the medium never changed, right? It was always, he would sit down, write his report, write his story, write his profile, write his whatever it was that certain day. As you are now in the prime of your career and probably will be here for 20, 25 years.
Sure, hope so.
Yeah, right. How do you navigate how people digest your work, how they take in what you do?
Yeah, it's...
Because nobody's flipping the page anymore, right?
Right.
And
especially now at On 3, everything that we do is online. So, one of my coworkers, Koki Riley, who does a great job covering baseball, LSU baseball, and football as well, was asking me recently, what are you going to miss about working in a newspaper? I said, the thing I'm going to miss is, mostly is when I do have a story that I want to have a great design for, not being able to have that. But I don't know how many people are, especially in my generation, are going to the newspaper anymore. I'm about to turn 30. I feel like I was at the very tail end of people who grew up with a newspaper in their house. And so it's, I guess what's just changed about it is the presentation is so much different. And I certainly hope that the Advocate continues to print, and as long as that possibly can. I think it's a great thing to have. There's so many markets that is disappearing. I'm from Atlanta. The AJC stopped printing a newspaper.
Right. Yeah,
I had to teach my 92-year-old grandmother earlier this year how to read it on her tablet, which was
tall task.
Yeah, that was a bit of a struggle. May picked it up okay, but it was she was not comfortable with that. So anyway, I think I've probably gone off on a tangent that wasn't related to your question exactly. But
no, I think it's fascinating because of the way that it changes so much. I know this industry that we are, this medium we speak in is just, it's like moving water under your feet, trying to keep up with what's next. How do you present it? How do you present it to a place, to people's attention span that they care about? I think it's just part of the gig that people, you don't think about.
The shifting sands is really difficult to feel standing on something that is so unstable. And for me, what I feel kind of fortunate about is, as in my job, I don't necessarily have to think about that too much.
Yeah.
I find in particular now on 3, we have some great people who are, that's what they think about all the time. That's what they do, is how to deal with social media, how to put our stuff out into so it can see the most eyes. And my job is just go report, get information, tell stories, and that kind of frees me up to be able to just focus on that. And instead of trying to spend tons of time, maybe, I'm sure there's lots of people who've had success really try to building a brand on social media. I feel like that's very difficult, obviously. And I like that I can just kind of go and work. I like doing the work.
Yeah, for sure. When you talk about the industry and how it has changed, the people that have influenced the industry, I'd love to know how many people, Scott Rabelais, Sam King, some of the greats at The Advocate, have influenced to go be writers in their career. Who did you read? When did you know that you were like, I want to do this?
I knew I wanted to get into sports media around 10 or so, watching College Game Day. I was like, that show was incredible. And I was like, I want to do that because I love college football. And especially, it probably wasn't too many years after that where I realized I wasn't good enough to play at the next level. I would have to give that up. Yeah. And in college is where I got into writing, and at the student newspaper at Georgia, the Red and Black. And it was really reading Wright Thompson, who's the incredible feature writer at ESPN. He came out, I don't know if y'all remember it, but that Tiger Woods profile that he did.
The Tiger Woods and the Michael Jordan profiles that he did are still two of the most fascinating reads I've ever read.
And that came out like while I'm in the middle of college figuring out what I want to do. And like my whole cohort, we were like just captivated by that story in particular. It
was the access, right?
Yeah.
Nobody could get to those people like Wright did.
I know.
Nobody got to Jordan. Nobody got to Tiger, especially in that time.
Yeah.
I mean, Tiger was the king of the world at that moment.
That's right. I don't even think he ever got an interview with Tiger for the story, but he just went after it, and it was remarkable. And ESPN at that time and a lot of other places were spending money on that kind of storytelling, in-depth feature work, and you don't see that as much anymore. And that's what really got me into it, was wanting to be able to try to tell stories like that. So Wright was a big one. John Branch, who's at the New York Times, he was somebody who I was always impressed with. Seth Wickersham, anybody who was telling deep stories and really getting into the root of a thing, I was captivated by that kind of work and wanted to try to do that.
Are you constantly looking at people's grammar?
I was literally, that thought just went through my head. Fanboys.
Do you look at
Do
you look at text messages and emails and be like, these morons?
So no, I don't think of it in that way. But I do get like when I see
it pops.
people using their when they should be using its. I see it every time because I'm like think about that a lot. My friends give me a hard time, at least they used to, because like all of my texts would have like proper grammar and like punctuation at the end of them, and nobody else's did that.
No three dots from Wilson.
Semicolon, therefore, comma.
Wrong use of the dash, dude. All right. What do you make of Lane Kiffin being in Baton Rouge?
It's going to be great theater. It's going to be so fun one way or another. I don't know if he's here for a long time, but it's going to be a good time.
Sign me up.
Yeah. It should be quite the ride. It feels like something, and I'm interested to see, if y'all agree with this. There feels to be, we talked so much about cultural fit with Brian Kelly not being there, not existing, and it probably wouldn't have mattered if he had won. It feels though like right off the bat, there's something about Lane and about LSU that kind of matches well. Do y'all think so?
Absolutely. Okay. Just the culture here is, as soon as he came in, he's out eating boudin with a recruit, and that's just kind of how he rolls. And I mean, now like you're talking about the times, and it's kind of almost like a 12-year-old with his phone a little bit at times, but that fits here for whatever reason, and it was immediately like kind of key in a lock situation. It feels like, and then just from we've gone all the way back from his first press conference here. It's kind of when we started things here, and it's like, man, you look at things and it's like a little different. It's, just different, and from his, as a person looking at him too, he's just kind of a little different here, but it fits the mold almost.
Reminds me a lot of Will Wade. Like their personalities and the way that they operate, the way that they are in the room. they're not focused on the things around them. Whatever their focus is, they attack it, whether it's the social, whether it's the basketball, the football. They don't care what people think about them. They know that they're going to be polarizing. They know that there's going to be a group of people that hate them, and it doesn't really bother them. I mean, I think I've seen, you could probably speak better to this, but I've seen a lot of coaches that really do care what people think and say. They tell you they don't, but they really do. I don't believe Kiffin and Wade care at all.
I think you just said something that like it crystallized for me, like what it is about Lane that matches up with this place is that he is polarizing. There are people who maybe don't like him, don't understand him, and that he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Like I was talking with someone recently who's fairly high up in the pecking order of things around LSU, and it was in reference to the Will Wade hire. And this person was talking about how, like, people just sort of see this school down in Cajun country and they don't really they don't make an effort to understand it. They don't really get it. They always sort of feel affronted by it in some way just because they don't get it. And this person was like, we don't care. We just want to win.
Yeah.
And that sort of feels a little bit like Kiffin and Wade.
Absolutely. And I think that was what Brian Kelly felt like coming down here. And I think he was so kind of surprised by it that he voiced it. I remember I interviewed him one time and I was like, what was the thing that surprised you most when you got to Louisiana? And he was like, the amount of good schools y'all had down here. And it was like almost kind of like he looked at Louisiana like just a bunch of backwards people talking about football. You know what I mean? Like, and you got down here and you're like, wow, they have really like high quality education down here. And they take things seriously and they're good in business. And I think that's where those two really fit in well. I mean, Will said it at his press conference. I'm about Louisiana. Louisiana's about me. I mean, he's from Nashville. I mean, he ended up here at 38 years old and can't get away from the place. So, I think it grips some people, and it pulls you in. And I think those two are very good examples of people that could really thrive here.
Yeah.
Because you have, it seems like it's tough to get the people behind you in those positions. If you do kind of one thing wrong, people are like, I hate the guy, and I've never really liked him. Like those two. I mean, Wade on the way out, his army that he had behind him when he got fired the first time, I mean, you could pack the PMAC over and over again with it. And Lane's building that same type of tribe, it feels like. Yeah,
you mentioned the Boudin and all that, and a lot of it is not going to affect, obviously, his success as a coach one way or another. And everybody knows that. Right. But, like, the willingness and the times that he's spending on going and embracing LSU and embracing Louisiana, wanting to be one of us is like means something, I think, to people who are from here who are used to getting looked down upon by national people who have never come and spent any time around here. It feels good, I would think, to sort of see this coach coming and embracing that, ingratiating himself into that, and it's kind of interesting because Lane, from everybody I've talked to who knows him, it says that he's actually pretty introverted. He's kind of like a little bit awkward sometimes in social settings.
Will Wade,
same way.
Yeah.
And that he's really not quite what you see on social media is how he really operates, but he knows how to use social media to kind of present a certain picture, which is obviously very effective in the day and age in which we live in now. What do you make of the money? What do you make of all this money? That's the money for the roster, the money for everything around LSU.
I mean, it feels like even like going to get Will, paying Kim, paying Jay Johnson. Like Lane's roster. You paid Lane and his staff. You paid Brian Kelly to walk. I mean, I love it, but I mean, is this funny money? I mean, is this real? Like,
where the trees at?
Right.
I have the same questions. I have not been able to get super clear answers on, and I keep asking around, like, where is this coming from? How is this, like, financially possible? Because they have spent, what do we total it up to? At least like $240 million they've committed over since Brian Kelly got fired. Some of that's dead money and to coaching buyouts, and some of it is future commitments like that they're made to this roster that has cost at least $40 million for this fall. And where it's coming from, I don't know. I think there are certainly people who around LSU who are questioning the sustainability of this, and because it's hard to see that this could continue year after year after year. Can you always fund a $40 million plus roster? The money is going to have to come from somewhere, because you're not going to be able to just go to donors all the time for that. Right. And the third-party NIL is really where, that's got to come from. How accessible is that always going to be? I know that it's made some people nervous, for sure.
Yeah. But when you look around college sports, and this is something now that your job, this is the title of your job, being the national reporter. When you look around college, I see this in certain cities. Like, people are just throwing money. I mean, this is happening in places. Are you seeing this? I mean, this is not just Baton Rouge.
Correct. Yeah, LSU is one of a number of schools that are committing $40+ million to their roster this season. But that is certainly like on the high end.
Yeah.
And there's not, I couldn't give you an exact number, but I would have a hard time seeing more than like 12 or something like that, really doing that kind of money for this team. And also then, with the buyouts and the contracts, gosh, it is a lot of dough. Wouldn't you like to get a slice of that?
I mean, I really and truly, in 2004, I was thinking about being a coach, like a basketball. And I think back to it, if you would have known they were paying just mid-level basketball coaches $3 million a year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the money has become so...
It's absurd.
Outrageous. At some point, I know that in everything, seemingly, once the toothpaste is out of the tube, it's impossible to backtrack that. At some point, this has to be calmed, right? I mean, these millions and millions and millions of dollars of contracts.
Okay, so calmed, for players, calmed for coaches, or calmed for
coaches. I think the players are going to grow.
Okay.
Right? I mean, because this is obviously something that they don't have any idea of what they're looking at. It's going to take, it feels like almost a decade for them to have some type of
solution,
rules, regulations on how you pay the roster.
Right. With coaches, though, it's how are you going to get an agent to agree to be the one to do a market reset?
I know.
LSU was going to be kind of an interesting case study after Governor Landry came out so emphatically the way he did in that press conference. And then they end up paying Lane Kiffin $91 million fully guaranteed. Right. So it's hard to see that really changing. Maybe some other elements of contracts will change. We saw LSU give Lane a shorter term than they gave Brian Kelly, so that if they were to fire him at the same point at which they fired Brian Kelly, I think it would cost less money than it was to fire Kelly. But there's still a lot of money out there. Coaches, Lane Kiffin has a provision in his contract that says that I think it's if he were. I don't know I can't remember the exact language because I haven't looked at it in a while, but it's sort of if he were to win a national title, then he automatically is made the highest paid coach in the country.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that's only going to continue to go up. Maybe other parts of it will change, like the length of a contract. Maybe schools can start to get buyouts a little bit more favorable than they have been recently, but it's not clear exactly. I have a hard time seeing the coaches start to make less.
Yeah.
Players are only going to continue to make more. We had a recruit in the 2027 class tell one of my coworkers at Rivals today. His quote was, the market for him, he's been getting told it's like $300,000, but he thinks he's worth $1 million. That's the mentality that some of these players have right now, which is
a sophomore
shocking.
In high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I guess he's a rising
junior. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like there's a detachment from reality in some cases, but there are other players who are getting $1 million.
Yeah.
But this was a player at a non-premium position who was under the impression that that's what he should be getting paid without ever having played a snap in college.
And the crazy thing is, somebody out there is probably going to pay him. I mean, it's the desperation for players has turned into this, pay him. I mean, we got to pay him. It's wild. You brought up the governor. We grew up, Will and I were talking last week. I grew up reading Louisiana history books about Huey Long.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, Edwin Edwards was the governor. He's a real polarizing figures that everybody talks about. It feels like Landry's kind of etching his name into the history books here, because I think it was Hunt Palmer who said it best. He was like, you could draw a straight line the day that Will Wade was hired to the second half of Texas A&M in all of the happenings really of the governor.
Yeah.
He's out, we want him, bring them in. The next thing you know, you look up and Lane Kiffin's running the football program and Will Wade's back at the basketball program. How do you kind of mark his his presence through all of this?
It's been influential, and he, sort of as soon as he got elected, started making changes and sort of shaping things in the. I was about to say in his image. I don't know that quite feels right, but like the way that he wanted, putting allies in place and
his politics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so as soon as that happened, you started to think, oh, that might not be good for Scott Woodward.
Yeah.
And sure enough, it wasn't good for Scott Woodward. They butted heads on a number of issues, and he gets involved with trying to bring Will Wade back last year.
Yeah, which I think was kind of that kind of got it rolling downhill for Woodward.
That's what I've been told as well.
Yeah,
was one of the big things that ended up sort of leading to him getting dismissed. It wasn't long after that too that William Tate, the president, left for Rutgers. He and Landry did not see eye to eye, and then. Obviously, with Scott Woodward getting sort of ousted.
Yeah. Board of directors turned over.
Now you've got Landry allies in a lot of key positions. And so he has a heavy influence on LSU sports and was a big reason that the Will Wade hire ended up actually taking place this year.
Right. We mentioned Dellinger at the top of the interview. As we mentioned, he's probably the best in the game right now as far as the national coverage goes, especially for college sports. How do you reference him? And what's the challenge of this job of covering, you mastered covering LSU.
Oh,
you were great at it, but it's one school. You lived in Baton Rouge, you followed the program, and you were the best at it. How do you now take that mentality to full country coverage?
It's something I'm learning as I go, kind of. I'm just asking as many people who have already been doing this job for a number of years, how do you do this exactly? How do you connect yourself nationally? Ross is somebody who I'll be leaning on quite a lot. I already have, and I'm grateful for his guidance. And I have other friends, though, who have been national writers for a while, and other people at On3 who I'm getting to know now who are giving me great tips about it. I'm trying to just sort of meet as many people as I possibly can right away and just say, hi, I'm Wilson. This is who I am. I want to do a good job and get connected with people. And, so I've got some stories coming up that I'm excited about just to be able to kind of, tell stories about different teams. I'm grateful that some programs are already giving me some access here fairly quickly and just kind of keep doing that as much as I possibly can over the coming years, I guess. It's the only way I sort of know how to do it. I'm going to get out on the road as much as I can and just meet people and see things. And because I really like to try to, if I'm going to go write about a place, I want to try to go and visit that place to be able to try to understand it at least in some way. So that's kind of the only way. That's what my instinct is telling me anyhow.
March Madness just wrapped up. Great Final Four, great national champion in Michigan. That's obviously the NCAA's headliner event. It feels like that's really what they're hanging on for and kind of creates this big budget for them year in, year out. As somebody who has a strong voice in college athletics, what do you see their role in being the present to the future?
The NCAA specifically, as it relates to March Madness or everything?
Just everything. Because it feels like March Madness is the only thing that they have left.
Right. Yeah. No, it's their moneymaker.
Yeah.
And now they might expand it, which I don't.
Takes away from something.
What's the point?
Right.
Money, I guess.
Right.
I don't fully understand that one. What is the NCAA's role moving forward? Yeah, it's going to have to continue to run that tournament. That's going to be the big thing. They have less and less influence on college football specifically. And what'll be interesting to see in the years ahead is, does college football really split off from NCAA governance? Yeah. Does it go and form its own sort of thing? Do you end up with this super league? I don't know. I don't have the answers to that. But that's certainly a thought that some people have, that maybe that's where things are headed. Because already, really enforcement as it relates to rosters and that kind of thing is being handled through now this new College Sports Commission.
Yeah.
That's not even...
Which seems like they don't have a lot.
They're figuring things out. Yeah.
Right.
And then the college football playoff isn't run by the NCAA either. So they have less and less influence over that. They'll have to continue to exist in order to run championships in the other sports. That'll be their main reason for existing, unless somebody were to come up with a way for another entity to do that.
Do you sense the Southeastern Conference panicking over the Big Ten winning 3 national championships in football? They've just gone back-to-back in basketball. and they're doing it with different programs, is which I think is kind of raising eyebrows in this part of the country. Do you feel that?
I don't know if I feel panic necessarily, but I definitely have sensed that it's caught attention and that there's a recognition that the SEC kind of has to catch back up again. And, these things are cyclical. And obviously, it was, I think, would have been hard for the SEC to continue the run of dominance that it had forever. But when the NIL started to exist, the Big Ten gained an advantage. It has more people from those alumni bases that own Fortune 500 companies and have maybe deeper and deeper pockets than even you do in the SEC. And so that they were able, I think, to go really quickly sort of take advantage of this system, and the SEC has to figure out how to punch back.
Do you think there are realistically schools that can compete in the Big Four like LSU has done for so many years? Football, college basketball, women's college basketball, and baseball. Can a school do that anymore?
I think that it can. I'm interested to see that it can as well. Because LSU is not only just those four, but it's also invested in track and field and gymnastics and a fan base that wants to be good at everything.
Yeah.
You're not going to really be able to be good at everything now. And it does seem like LSU may be focusing on those Big Four more, and maybe you don't invest as heavily into, at least in the roster spending, softball and gymnastics and track and field. And is that going to affect the ability to be successful? Verge Osbury, got to talk to him earlier this year, and he didn't get specific about, saying which programs they were really going to be focused on in that way. But he did acknowledge that there might be years in certain sports where you recognize all of a sudden that you have a really good athlete, like, oh, you've got a chance here, we got to take advantage of it, and they spend a little bit more in something in order to try to take advantage of that and capitalize on it. But that year after year after year, it will be hard. You just can't sustain that necessarily. LSU will always want to be good in football.
Sure. Has to be.
In the four sports that you mentioned, I think it's always going to try to invest in those. The other ones, a little unclear if it's going to be able to sustain that. Do you decide, like, are you going to be okay just having kind of a top 20 softball program?
Yeah.
Probably have to if you're going to invest as heavily as you do in those other sports.
And there's only a hand-select amount of schools like around the country, Texas, Georgia, some of the Florida, that can really do that. Ohio State, that can make the investment to say, we're with you and can do this.
Yeah. There's not, you mentioned Georgia, they aren't even in that camp.
And I saw where their top donor just passed away. Like their big, the one that Kirby really leaned on, is so. I mean, that has to be such a stressor now for those roles. I mean, I think of the athletic director role, what it was 3 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, to what it is now. I mean, that has to be one of the most dreaded positions. I mean,
they're well compensated.
They're very well compensated, but you used to kind of play golf all day. And you used to be able to kind of just keep people smiling, like shake the hands and give the access and take the plane ride. But now it's constantly, hey, can we get more? Can we have more? Can we get more?
Well, and the more is now just distributed in a different way too. Now it's, because 10 years ago it was the facilities arms race.
Yeah.
And now it's we need more money. We need more money in order to be able to pay these players. I think it's not necessarily that the stressors are, I've never been in the seat, but necessarily more intense than they used to be, but from having talked to ADs, what stresses them is completely different than what it used to be, and what they have to prioritize is totally different. And there's been, certainly for some programs in the early days of NIL, struggles to kind of get that going and get that off the ground because of, he had certain donors who didn't really want to contribute to that. That's, they've had to go and change those kind of mindsets and make them understand why they need money for these things. And now they have to go and be able to set up third-party NIL in order to be able to go over the cap, which, because it's a soft cap now. So, so the AD, and you hear a lot of administrators, certainly complain and about the finances that are there, and those are definitely real issues, but for them, but it's just kind of the name of the game now. You just kind of have to deal with it.
A few more. What do you make of LSU's schedule?
Oh, it's so good. It's so good.
Isn't it great?
Oh my gosh.
I've said that out loud. And people are like, what do you mean it's great? I mean, just like from the entertainment. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like you start with Clemson and you get Texas in November, like everything in between. Like, what do you mean?
It's awesome.
great.
It's my hope for LSU this season and for the LSU fan this season is that they have a team that is good enough for fans to enjoy that schedule, to be competitive in all of these games, and ideally for the fans win most of them because it is fantastic. Yeah, with an opener at home against Clemson, a game that we're far out away, and it's going to be tough for LSU to get everything to gel right off the bat. But Clemson lost a lot.
Yeah.
You got to come to Tiger Stadium now. I think LSU should probably win that game. Then you obviously have Lane going back to Ole Miss. There's so many juicy storylines. Lane's got to go to Ole Miss and Tennessee in the same year. Two places that hate him.
Week after he plays Alabama.
Yeah.
I mean, like the November portion of the schedule alone, where you've got Bama, Texas, Tennessee, Arkansas, is just.
That's crazy.
I mean, that's an NFL schedule, but that's what you got when you sign these TV contracts, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
It's
expansion.
the first year of 9 SEC games.
Yeah.
And we get so many intriguing games as a result of that. Texas A&M back in Tiger Stadium. And then it seems like a kind of a soft middle in October.
Yeah.
To maybe recharge for that November stretch. But you get Arch Manning coming into Tiger Stadium,
Right,
a Manning back in Louisiana. The storylines are just
It's
fantastic.
Wilson, my friend, it's great to see you.
Good to see you too.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
On everything. And sorry for everything that you've been through. I know that this has been a very trying year for you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been hard to describe. Maybe a conversation for another day.
Sure, I didn't mean to bring that up like that.
No, it's okay. If I could just, I've said this before, I'll just always say it again because I am so appreciative of everybody who has reached out and supported me, supported our family through Elise's sickness and through her death. It's helped us get through it, and we're still working through it every day. But thank you to everybody who has, and I appreciate you as well.
It's great to see you.
You too, George.
Congratulations on everything. Wilson Alexander, Louisiana Loaded Podcast. Check back in with us. Make sure and keep up with us. Like, share, comment, subscribe. We'll be back with you next week.